the audience that wants to pull something off the consent calendar? No. Is there anyone from the commission?
Yes, Mr. Chair, I'd like to pull the minutes for a small correction, a couple corrections. And I'd also like to have a brief discussion on 920 Adams. I have some comments on that.
Well, let's pull off the minutes first and discuss.
Okay, the minutes. Yeah, I have a couple of corrections if I could. Page 3, line 32, I think it should not say private party, but should say private property. And then there was another place where the minutes preparer said on page 5, line 13, I couldn't quite understand Chair Kent. So do you know what you said?
Well, I'm trying to pull up those minutes. I don't have them in front of me. So
Yeah.
I have a copy, because there was another item on page 4 for me where there was a
what was that,
question.
Doug, that you said?
Sorry.
A new computer. It didn't automatically load up. It took up issue. Chair Kent believes the part could be combined and reduced once the extension of oh yeah, this is where I suggested a shorter version. Non-conforming walls which encroach into required setback areas shall be allowed to be extended subject to a design review by Planning and Zoning Commission and obtaining, well, I think that's at design, subject to design review and approval by Planning and Zoning Commission, period. That's what I was trying to say, that one sentence.
Okay.
And if I could just speak to the one on page 4, line 43, since this was a question that the minutes preparer had about my comments. So yes, I think that it in that sentence referred to the existing front wall. So we can just remove the parentheses and question marks.
Okay. And then the last one, I had a correction on page 5, line 29. Commissioner Giesenfields resigned from the commission. He was not reappointed, is more accurate.
But he did resign. So he was not reappointed, and then he sent us an email of resignation.
Oh, okay.
So
Okay, I sent him an email. I didn't understand that. Okay. All right. Then then that correction is not necessary, I guess. All right. So that's it for the minutes. And then,
Okay.
I guess.
So should we vote on adding those clarifications to the minutes? Or we'll just make those clarifications, add them to the consent calendar, and then it'll become one of the
Okay.
total. Okay, let's move on to your Adams.
Well, 920
And, sorry,
Adams.
Before we do that, I believe I have to recuse myself from this one because of location.
Yeah.
Is that right? So do I need to leave the room?
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh.
So procedurally,
So we
if
could
we're going to vote on the rest of, could we vote on the rest of the consent calendar and then?
Yeah, that's a good point.
Okay.
So let's pull 920 off the consent calendar.
Okay,
Vote on that with the revisions to the minutes, and they'll come back to the 920.
And then do you also want to take action on the conditional use permit for massage services?
Yes. And I have not pulled that. I have no problems.
Yeah, that one's
Anyone's
good to go,
pulled it.
yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
I can make a motion then to approve the minutes as revised, as well as item 4-3, the conditional use for massage at Supple Skincare.
I'll second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Okay, all motions on the consent calendar have been approved, except we've pulled 920 Adams.
Okay, so I'll,
Okay.
I guess someone let me know when you're done.
Yeah. And so if you're here for the skincare application, your project's been approved. Yeah. Good luck. Okay. On 920 Adams, this is a nice project. In my way of thinking, it's nicely designed. I don't think we need a staff report on it, but I want to make a couple of comments about the existing conditions on the front of the building. It is going to a very high FAR, and so it does meet our exceptional design criteria. And based on that, I don't believe there are any changes proposed to the front of the building. And I think that the replacement vinyl window and on both of those replacement vinyl windows are really not very attractive. And I would I would love to see those replaced and upgraded with the kinds of windows that are going to go in the new addition. And similarly, the garage door is very plain and really probably could be replaced. And it's not a big item to do that. And I think that to meet, my idea is to meet the exceptional design criteria that we should require that those windows be upgraded to match the quality of the windows being put in the new addition, and that the garage door be replaced with something probably with some articulation in it, some moldings, some design, something to make it a little bit more attractive. So, and then there's the abandoned car with a flat tire in the front yard. Can't do anything about that, but gosh, I sure hope. It's a nice old classic car. I sure hope you get it fixed and up and running. It sure looked better. It's a great one to restore. So anyway, those are my comments. And I don't know what the commission wants to do with any of that.
Can I follow up? Yeah, I agree with what you've been saying, and I'm looking at the elevations also. And I just think the upper story windows don't bear a whole lot of relation to the lower floor. I would really prefer to see them match a little bit more in at least size. You have double hung windows on both, but I think they would look a lot better if they kind of match that consistent pattern along the bottom elevation there, especially on the south side. I'm not so worried about the north side. It's going to be pretty far in the back, but again, just kind of following that same pattern that you've got, I would encourage that.
I think that's a good comment.
Yeah, they just look a little small and not quite in relationship to the lower part of the house. And I mean, I think it's a nice design overall, and I like it. The other thing that, and maybe I don't know if this is completely within our purview, but the lower window, the lower wall on the west elevation, I don't really like that on the left side there. It just seems like you're missing an opportunity to open your kitchen up to the backyard. I would encourage you to move the range to the north wall and open that up so you have a more expansive kitchen. I don't know if that's something that we
That's you're talking about
act on, but
that's the rear elevation.
the rear elevation.
Okay. Yeah.
And other than that, I really encourage to see solar panels on the roof. Hopefully that doesn't go away in any kind of budgeting decisions, but I think that's great, and I would encourage you to consider maybe an all-electric house. You could probably offset 100% of your electric use with that, and, you know, it's a good step to getting close to net zero, I think, and being pretty green. So those are my comments, but I do like the project. Yeah, I think it'd be a nice addition to the neighborhood.
So maybe if that, could we ask a quick question of the sponsor then? If they're both I had one question on just the cladding material that's specified of clarifying.
Maybe we should get a presentation of the project, since we're kind of getting into detail here.
Should we, or should we have the architect or the applicant come up and talk about our comments? Either way.
Well, they are detailed, so we could just skip.
Yeah, why don't you go,
Okay,
yeah,
come
go
on
to the
up.
microphone there, so.
So I guess my question was just clarifying that the clad windows are aluminum clad windows? Okay, great. And I'm familiar with the work that Jarvis Architects do, and I've got all the confidence that this will be executed nicely. I do actually think it's a really valid point, though, about the window replacements, sort of the non-original window replacements that are existing on the front facade. Is that something that your clients are open to changing and sort of bringing back the architecturally compatible windows? The front, yeah. No, the main picture window, yeah. Not the casements, the primary, the one with the grills, or the mullions, yeah.
There, yeah. That's the one I'm most concerned about. They're both are vinyl, white vinyl windows, I think, and
They're Andersons, actually, but they were part of a big remodel that was done 15 years ago.
Really,
Yeah.
really, huh?
It probably went through here at that time, but
Yeah. All right.
I mean, I guess I would agree that if you all are willing to do that, I think that would be a great addition to this project. It's a little hard for me to, if these windows were permitted, which I guess maybe I would ask staff if y'all have confirmation of whether or not they were permitted. If they were permitted windows at that time, I have a little bit of a hard time insisting that, you have to change them as part of this project. Certainly, I think it would be great if y'all want to. If they were not originally done with permits, now to me, that's a different story. And that could be a condition of approval. The garage doesn't give me much heartburn. I think, a fresh coat of paint and a disappearing garage door, I think is sometimes just as nice.
I'm guessing it was done with a permit. It wasn't with the ponds, but there was an addition on the back that was also done.
Okay.
So,
I want to weigh in a little bit about those windows, because, on the upper floor facing the west, that window's set back quite a bit on the west end.
oh,
No, that's right, south side, west, southwest. You're right, that elevation on the upper, the
South
the
elevation.
upper left corner, far
South
left side of
elevation,
the building.
Yeah.
The upper window, I think your comment, Ian, was that it didn't match with the lower window.
Well, I'm
Because
just
that's set
looking
back
at,
quite a bit, and there's a trellis structure over it, so they're really kind of separate visually when you're there.
well, I'm looking at the upper floor windows in relationship to the lower floor windows, and I just think they should match, at least in size, I think would make it look a lot better.
this was done on
Yeah, it could be,
purpose
actually.
for privacy for the neighbor next door. The neighbor next door is basically the same house. And those windows look down on essentially this same facade. And so these windows are put in relatively small to get south light into that room, but not so that these people would feel like they were getting stared down into with the windows in their house. That's why they were sized the way they are. It was a conscious decision.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, well, I can understand that.
Yeah.
I would still opt for larger windows there and more south light. I think it's good for
It's
your
nice.
project. It's good for your daylighting. It's, I don't know. I'm not too worried about privacy issues. I think things like that just kind of work themselves out.
Yeah.
But, so.
Is that something?
Staff, did you guys know whether or not those, the front windows were permitted?
We think they were permitted. There's
Okay.
an entry in the permit log that shows that all the windows were replaced in 2005.
Which seems about the era of these,
Sounds right,
or so.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, all right, that sounds like, okay, then I guess we should let them be, then stick with them.
Yeah. There are, the original windows, which were mostly double hung, these guys probably had 6 lights
Yeah,
in them. This, when it was replaced, I'm sure was a big plate glass window, but originally it was probably 3 vertical ones, which was
Yeah.
nice.
mm-hmm,
These are all original, but they don't meet egress. And
yeah,
so we had to have windows that meet egress. So we did get a few double hungs in here, but these are set for egress, and this is the bathroom with a decent view out towards the bay. And these were done in that 2005, and so it was kind of carried along like that. This was the structural consideration, actually, and we did go through whether to put the range over on this side, but it got too squeezed, and the way the Ponds use their house and their kitchen, I understand completely why this seems like a big box. There's also a fig tree that's right here, and we needed some sheer wall across the back end of the house. So it's not there just because there was nothing else to do. We could certainly look at that.
all right, all right.
Well, I guess I would leave that as more of a suggestion than any kind of
Yeah.
requirement. But it just seems like you're creating sort of a dark
Yeah.
alcove, or I wouldn't say,
Yeah.
I say dead end of a kitchen, but it just seems like,
I understand the concept.
yeah,
And it's trying to get enough cabinets in there and.
right, yeah. I mean, I don't know why you don't just square off that corner of the kitchen either, but is that, just another,
There was a long discussion.
okay, with your clients, I suppose, but, there may be a way to do it all by squaring that off, and you can get a little more wall, a little more window, a little more cabinet space, but, I'll leave that up to you.
Okay, well, I think I'm reasonably satisfied then with my comments are addressed, and you've heard them. And I'd love to see that front window replaced, but you don't have to do it. And so I think with that, I can move approval of the project.
Great.
And,
I'll second
any
that.
other- Okay.
Yep.
So I'll move approval of planning application 1901, design review and parking exception for a two-level addition at 920 Adams.
Great, yeah, second.
Okay.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Aye. Okay.
That's consent.
Okay.
Okay, so the
You're good. Great. Good luck.
approved. Your public comment period for persons desiring to address the commission on an item that is not on the agenda. Please note that each speaker is limited to up to 3 minutes. The Brown Act limits the commission's ability to take and/or discuss items that are not on the agenda. Therefore, such items are normally referred to and will be referred to staff for comment on a future agenda. Is there anyone that would like to make a public comment on something that's not on the agenda? Nope. Okay, moving on. To discussions and possible actions on matters related to the following. So planning application 18-063, conditional use permit and design review and signage for a 578 Cleveland Chef's Touch. Could you introduce the project?
Yes, good evening. Before you tonight is a revised plan set for a proposed commercial kitchen at 578 Cleveland Avenue, Chef's Touch LLC. For your review tonight, we've given you two options within your packet. We've included findings and conditions of approval, as well as special conditions of approval in the event that you can approve the project. Alternatively, we've also provided you with findings denying the project without prejudice, which would allow the applicant to reapply and start fresh with a new application. So we've given you two options. This is your third review this evening, so we're hoping that this can be brought to a conclusion for everyone's benefit. Just to refresh your memory, the subject property is a 62,400 square foot lot with an existing 25,189 square foot building that was built in 1948 and added on to in 1973. Most recently, it was occupied by El Cerrito Tires, and they were in there from 2013 to 2017. And in 2013, the commission approved a use permit to allow the operation of that business. As I mentioned, you reviewed this application proposal twice, initially in September and then again at the end of November. With each review, the applicant has been asked to refine the plans and provide additional details for commission review. And just to affirm, we're hoping you can take action on this request tonight. So this is a picture of the building, the street view, to give you some context. And in terms of entitlements, the applicant is pursuing three requests: a conditional use permit to allow the commercial kitchen, as well as an in-house restaurant and cafe, a residential unit, and food truck parking. There is also a mezzanine that is proposed in that upper level, and that is contained within the design review scope. With that, there's also some modifications to the exterior, including window alterations, rooftop equipment screening, new business signage, so on. This is the site plan that is included in your packet. So it shows the layout of the parking, some proposed landscaping improvements, as well as the floor plan. So in your packet, we've included special conditions of approval that would be required if you can if you find you can approve the project this evening. The first special condition relates to floor area ratio, and I'll get into that, but ultimately it requires a reduction in the overall building area. There is also a requirement for the municipal regional stormwater permit, also known as C3. We've included a special condition related to unpermitted construction, as well as Alameda County Environmental Health Review and parking. And the last condition was actually a result of your review in November. So in regards to the floor area ratio, the commercial mixed-use zoning district allows an FAR of up to 0.5. So in this case, that's a max build-out of 31,200 feet. Currently, the property is at a 0.4 FAR, so there is some flexibility to add more conditioned space. Upon looking through the floor plans and a table that was provided on the cover sheet, it appears that the project is over by a little over 3,600 square feet. So that would require a modification as part of the building permit plan check. Actually, in advance of that, the plans would have to be revised to show the reduction in square footage as part of the project approval. In regards to C3 compliance, the applicant's attorney met with city staff and has indicated that they're willing to comply with stormwater compliance requirements. Right now, there's a scheme that would include stormwater runoff treatment areas with drainage that would go to the railroad tracks, which is immediately west of the building and also lower than the current building. So we've included a condition of approval, which would require the applicant to have a licensed engineer in the state of California prepare a stormwater control plan prior to the building permit submittal. Similarly, it had been noted in the previous commission reviews that there had been unpermitted work, as well as work without proper Alameda County health approvals that are required for commercial kitchens. As part of that, obviously, our inspector has not been out there, and there's no approved plan set that we have. So with that, we would require a condition that a licensed engineer or architect prepare supplemental documentation verifying the condition of the unpermitted work. And also, there, similar to the FAR, there would be a reduction in the area. And also, as a general practice, regardless of whatever the scope is, anytime we observe unpermitted work, there are double fees that are assessed at the time of the building permit. In regards to parking, we have calculated the parking at 1 space per 1,000 square feet based on the industry and general uses. Based on a 25,000 square foot building footprint, this requires 25 off-street parking spaces. The applicant is proposing to accommodate 60 parking spaces, so that exceeds the threshold. Food trucks are proposed to utilize the parking lot in off hours, so that would be after 7 p.m. And then the parking lot would be available for patrons during business hours of 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. And at the previous discussion, there was some discussion of what the parking would look like if it was based strictly on the uses contained within the building. So that results in a total of about 67 total parking spaces, where 60 are provided. Some commissioners were okay with more of a blended approach based on the general use. And a condition had been, in response to that, we crafted a condition that required a review within 6 months from the operation commencement date to assess whether or not the parking is working, and we would come back to you with a report on that. In general, just to remind you, conditional use permits in the CMX are required for any business that goes through, so this commission looks at all uses in the CMX. We have taken kind of generally the approach of the industry general classification, as this is a food processing and packaging facility. And there it's required for the use permit. As we noted, there's 60 food trucks that will be on site during off hours. They are not proposed to operate on site. The business hours for the restaurant are proposed to be 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. Monday through Friday. So there wouldn't be a weekend activity. In terms of design review, there are some modifications to the exterior of the building, which you've looked at previously. This includes removing exterior windows on the south and east sides, as well as the storefront entry and double doors on the south elevation. Rooftop equipment is also proposed as part of the business, and there is a screen that is proposed that would shield that from public view. So this is a view of that south elevation and those new double doors and windows, and you can also see a detail of the mechanical equipment screen. There's also signage that's proposed, both for Chef's Touch and for the barbecue restaurant. They're going to be on 3 different sides of the building, so northeast and west sides of the building. We have not received any correspondence in response to the latest plans. The project is categorically exempt pursuant to 15332 of infill development projects of CEQA. And with that, we've given you 2 options tonight. You can approve, subject to the findings and conditions of approval, as well as special conditions, or deny the project without prejudice, subject to the findings of denial.
Thank you. Any questions of staff?
I have a question. We could continue the item too, right?
You can continue the item. I would point out, though, that if you do, that would be the 4th hearing on the project. You're certainly free to do so, but I think the staff and the applicant are eager to move this forward, and rather than sitting in a holding pattern.
Any other questions?
She looked like she was, go for it.
Yeah, I was going to say, I had a question, and I don't know, this isn't so much for staff, it might be more for the applicant on this, but the presentation said that the proposed hours are from 7 to 7, but the staff report notes that you guys are getting a type 41, a wine and beer on site. Those don't totally seem to align for me, that you would have a wine and beer license, but you would close shop at 7 p.m. with a restaurant. So maybe you can shed some light on sort of how the type 41 relates to your business plan of closing at 7?
Sure. Originally, we were thinking of doing some type of a brewery, but we decided it wasn't worth the expense, nor is it anything that we want to even try to undertake at this time. We want to get those kitchens open. So the idea was just to be able to serve beer and wine with our ribs and our barbecue.
So is that just a daytime activity? Is that the idea?
The reason I left it from 7 in the morning, most of the trucks are gone, and so the whole parking lot is open. So we'll have a good lunch crowd, a good breakfast crowd. And then we're thinking 7 o'clock until we get the rhythm down of what we're doing and how we're doing it. And then I'd like to have Saturdays, okay? But that would be closed on Sundays. And we can't really think about extending our hours past 7 yet until we get the rhythm of all these trucks. Because we've got trucks coming home to roost at 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock at night, and we cannot have the trucks not have a place to park. So I would like to have Saturdays, but we've got to be really, the barbecue does not trump the food truck parking. So it's going to be nice to have, because we'll be doing a lot of catering events, a lot of barbecuing to go out to catering events. So the catering is more important, and I thought we'd just get the rhythm again down till 7 in the morning, till 7 at night. And then I don't even know how we would do it if we would come back to the commission and say, you know, we're really successful, the parking's working, can we stay open till 9? Or can we be open on a Saturday? I don't know how to approach that, so just, yes.
Didn't you talk to some of the neighbors and they said you could use their parking after hours?
Bayshore and API both will let me use their lots. So if we did extend and say, and look, my people that'll be working there, they're going to want to go home. This isn't we never wanted to open a bar to say, let's be open until 2 in the morning or something like that. They want to go home. They're going to have long days. So 7, I think, is really a good cutoff. We might extend it till 9, but we do have 16 spots next door at Bayshore, which I think I brought a letter in on that they'll allow us to use their lots after 5.
But for now, you're only going to 7, and then for now, you're only going to 7, and some
Yes.
future date, you might come back and extend it.
In the future, we'll figure it out and say, hey, we can do it now. And we'll be able to come with facts.
Great.
Okay, great. That answers my question.
Sorry.
I just wanted to clarify, is there currently a condition of approval that says it wouldn't go past 7 based on what they've told us?
Yeah, typically, the operating hours.
It's a condition,
Hold over
okay.
into the conditions
Okay.
of approval.
And that's fine. I'm fine with that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Should I sit it out?
I did just have one question. I wanted to clarify, and this may be a moot point by now, if we have a clear commitment to, go through the process of analyzing the C3 compliance and low impact development, but it wasn't totally clear to me where the, conflict was on this issue, or why staff thought that it was required and why the applicant thought it wasn't. And I wasn't at the last meeting, so it's also possible that I just missed a lot of discussion about this. But if you are able to just summarize that background briefly, I would just appreciate it, because
Yeah, so just at a high level, this did come up at the November 28th hearing, and there was some question by the commission as to the thresholds that would trigger the C3 compliance, and so I'll have Jeff to explain the rest.
Good evening, Commissioners. Jeff Bond, the Community Development Director. So we went back to the Regional Water Quality Control Board permit that's assigned to all the cities in Alameda County, and looked at the definitions of what are regulated and not regulated projects. And the threshold really is a project that creates or replaces 5,000 square feet or more of impervious surface. And I think we believe that that's what's happening in this project. I think the applicant has a different perspective. But we feel strongly that it's an important environmental regulation, in addition to just the importance of complying with the Water Board's requirements, which we have to report to the Water Board on an annual basis. And again, we were using the definitions that are contained in the permit itself. There's also a technical guidance document that goes into a little bit more detail. And again, it's the 5,000 square feet of new or replacement of paved area.
And so because in staff's view, they are replacing or repaving at least 5,000 square feet of parking lot area?
Right.
Okay, thanks.
I think the other issue I remember was whether it needed to be brought to the street or could drain to its current spot.
So that's an area where I think we had a good discussion about that a couple of weeks ago. The general concept in Albany, our approach to drainage in Albany, is that we want to get stormwater into the public right-of-way where the city takes responsibility for the stormwater flow after that. The principle that we apply to applications, and this is whether it's a small house or a bigger project like this, is that a new project can't modify the natural flow or the existing flow of stormwater from one parcel to another. So our original idea was that it needs to be pumped up to the street. What we discussed, and I think is a feasible solution, is that in the course of redoing the parking lot, that the stormwater can be treated and then diffused in a way that it would essentially mimic the existing conditions today. There is a drainage ditch, I guess is the most accurate description of it, right to the west of the property line. It's on the railroad property. It's hard to imagine that there would be any potential for damage to any other property or to the railroad track itself. And I think it is reasonable to expect that with the proper design, that can be diffused in a way that matches today's surface flow and the surface flow that's been there for decades. And so that saves the hassle of a pump and a pump system up to the street.
Thank you.
Hi, Dave Syme here. We have done, we did have a good discussion, and we decided that we're going to be environmentally correct citizens, no matter what, C3 or not C3. And we looked into some of the solutions, and I'll just be real quick. We found a great solution that is a vault-type solution, where it comes in and the solids drop out, and the effluents and the oil, and it treats it. Great solution, about $30,000. It goes right underneath, if we wanted to go that way. If we want, or, which is, I think, a great solution. Or, and by the way, that solution is sized to handle 4 acres. Ours is only 2 acres. So that's a great solution. The other solution, there's a preference for a bioswale concept, and we're happy with that also. And the neat thing about that is we have the ability to route the water from the parking lot to the east through a planter thing that could become a 2,400 square foot swale to absorb a lot of it. Just route that, and that would go out onto Cleveland, half of the water flow. And then the other half could go through a bioswale toward the Union Pacific tracks and again be treated. And the cool thing about that is it splits the load. Instead of flooding Cleveland or flooding the tracks, it uses both of them. And the specs only say that we would have to make a bioswale of about 1,500 square feet. We would have almost 3,000 square feet of bioswale, which I think is also a pretty cool solution. So either one of those is great. And we're happy, you know, basically whatever the city wants, we're happy to do. I think those, so there are lots of great solutions, and any one of them are fine with us.
Great, good to hear.
Could you clarify what your role is in the project? I'm sorry, I don't know. I don't know. Are you the architect?
Yeah, I'm just a member of the community. No, I'm an attorney for Chef's Touch Kitchen.
All right, thank you.
Yeah. One of the engineers who wants the contract volunteered to come down here and give you guys a speech, and I spared you that, so.
Thank you. Other questions? I still have a question about the landscape. You speak to it and you have all the glowing terms, I want it to be beautiful. It's always the same landing plan, one plant every 30 feet with a green background, but it doesn't really call what that is, whether it's painted gravel or lawn, I don't know, because you can't tell. So as much as I like your vision, I don't see it on the plan. That's always keeps bothering me. And also the existing Monterey cypress, which you stated you love and you want to keep, and I think we both want to keep it, but keeping it is one, saying you want to keep it and actually going to the effort is another thing. And there's little tweaks we can do with getting that retaining wall away from it just a few feet. I think you might have the best of intentions with that cypress. Once they get in there with their backhoe and they're cutting the wall, if they're not really paying attention to it, it's gone.
Can I speak to this?
Yeah, please come up. Yeah.
So Jeff has been great about working with us to come up with a solution, like you had even asked for, what makes sense. The pumping didn't really work for everybody, so we got through that. When it gets back to when we propose to Jeff now, because Jeff really likes, and everybody likes the bioswales, now that planting is going to change now in the front along Cleveland, because it's going to have to be the swale, cobblestone, and all the plants that absorb water. So that'll have to be now revised if Jeff likes the new proposal that we're going to give him in a couple of days, showing that half the water can go to it's the front setback. Instead of a sidewalk, we'll have like 18 feet of walkway for cars, but then all the rest is going to be planter, about 10 feet of planter. So it's a perfect place for the bioswale. So we're thinking just to use like a speed bump type of a technique that would deter the water into a drain, which would then go into the bioswale. The bioswale will filter, and then we'll have curb kickouts in the curb that'll take the water that discharges through the pipe outside into Cleveland. No pump. We're not going to have a pressure. We're not going to have pressure problems in flooding the street. So that front. Even though we worked on the landscape, my landscape person was not that great at computer doing everything in color and everything, but he did give a complete plant list. So we're going to have to revisit that now, though, because if Jeff likes our idea about the front being a big bioswale, the plant palette will change. The next thing about the tree, that has to be engineered still. We have to, I just found out on that handicap ramp, it's a pretty in-depth engineering feat to make that perfect. So we can we want to stay away from the tree. We want to do it the right way. That all has to be.
I see you're definitely trying to stay, so I'm not.
It'll be submitted on the plan set that it's the setbacks, whatever an arborist would say, and we'll make sure that it's protected.
Yeah, setbacks and have some notes how to protect it. And
our goal on that handicap ramp is make sure it's handicap accessible. So that's the only thing that takes precedence. We got to make sure the slope is there.
I don't see that pond, actually.
There was a landscape plan that was submitted with the set.
Yeah, I see.
That had a
the
complete
landscape
schedule.
plan, and then I saw the detail plan too.
Okay, good.
This one here is the one I missed. Oh, that's the hand-drawn one. Okay, got it. Yeah. Oh, that's actually encourages me. You're right. Even though it's hand-drawn, it's something. Yeah.
And there was a complete list and spacing of all the plants this time.
Okay, great.
It just wasn't in color.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that.
Okay.
Okay, any other comments?
Comments, but not questions.
Questions, comments?
Public hearing, I guess.
We'll bring it back to, if everybody's finished.
Open the public hearing, I think.
Oh, thanks for that,
Yeah.
Doug. Yeah.
And then-
Anyone from the public like to speak on this project? Please come up and introduce yourself.
Thank you. My name is Virginia March. I live in the A building at Gateview, corner unit, and I have a direct visibility onto the subject property. My late husband and I moved there in '07, and we lived there from '07 to '15, and now I'm moving back because this is where my family lives in Albany. I've been in San Diego, so it took a lot to get me back here. But anyway, family did it. So I haven't moved in yet, but they're getting ready, and I'll be moving in within the next month. I was quite elated when I received the postcard from the city about this project, because this building and this property has always been on the ugly side, to put it, in the vernacular. I always thought it had potential, but it's been vacant, and then the businesses that were there did not properly take care of the property, and signage was all over the place, as you probably remember. And the city apparently allowed that. So I don't know a lot about this project. This isn't the first meeting I've been to on it, but I just wanted to let you know that from what I see, I'm encouraged by someone that really wants to put some effort into putting a business there and do some improvements that are greatly needed. As you know, the property is quite large and fairly dominant. The fact that others are not here from Gateview indicates that they don't care. There's no opposition, and you know that if there were, they'd be here in droves. So, I was really surprised that no one else was here. So if you have any questions for me, I'd be glad to answer them, but I did want to say that I'm a neighbor, looks down on it from the 10th floor, and really am pleased that something's going to happen, I hope. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any more comments from the public, speakers? Okay, we'll bring it back to the dais.
I did have one other question just for staff.
Yeah.
On the signage, I didn't, even though on the agenda it highlighted sort of the staff report and signage, I must have missed sort of the section on signage. What are the sort of signage controls or proposal tied to this, or is that not together yet?
In the CMX zone, it's pretty open. We don't have a lot of standards within the code. It just makes it subject to architectural review by the Planning and Zoning Commission, so you have wide discretion. The way our code is structured, it's actually quite generous. There's, I think, for it's a couple hundred feet of signage they could have if they were so inclined, but they're putting up 3 signs, one on the south side of the building and then a couple of roof-mounted signages. It's significantly under what the allowable threshold is for signage in the zoning district.
Are the roof-mounted signs directly illuminated, like acrylic box style, or are they uplit?
I think they're uplit.
They're uplit.
Yeah.
Your suggestion.
Okay, great.
They're going to be uplit, and they're going to be nice. I'm going to box. You didn't like box, really? We're not doing box.
You remembered.
I remember.
Great. Thank you.
Now, the front side, where it says Chef's Kitchen, will be these separate pieces, but not a box.
Okay.
It's a real, I think, it's a very good looking logo, and that'll be the one on the front. But up on the roof, where we can see them, nice uplifts.
Great, thanks.
Thank you. Is that it? Okay, bring the conversation back to the table. Who'd like to start?
I can go for it if, just jump in. I guess, so to cut to the chase, so I appreciate the work that the applicant has done to try to address some of the concerns. I know not everything that staff and commission members have asked for has necessarily been addressed on the front end, but I can tell, I appreciate that you have been working to get everything in order, and also really appreciate that staff has done a lot of hard work to try to develop conditions that would allow this project to move forward, but still meet the city's requirements. And, the first time you were here, again, I missed the last meeting, but the first time you were here, I believe I said I support I think the use is appropriate in this location. As your neighbor indicated, it does seem like it's an underutilized, vacant, and not particularly well-kept property, and so appreciate the interest in making an investment there. That said, I do have concerns about the project and being able to make the findings. I think in particular what we've seen from the record of, a little bit of resistance to meeting some of the city's requirements, and certainly the issues around the unpermitted work raised some concerns for me. And I do think that really we probably could go either way in the findings that we make. I think there's evidence to support findings either in favor of denial or approval of the project. That said, on balance, I am inclined to vote in favor of the project and allow you to move forward, but with the emphasis that the conditional use permit is really conditional, and it is really important to work with staff to make sure that the conditions that they've drafted are met, and not just on the front end, but implemented going forward. So that's my little speech, and I'll leave it there. But I am inclined to support the project with the revisions that have been made and with the incorporation of the conditions that staff have proposed in the staff report.
Well, I'll chime in. That was, I think, the exact same spiel that I was going to have. So, I won't reiterate everything. I do, though, want to share sort of my general, I'm not a fan when people do work without permits and not following the rules. And so, I would just put this on the record as sort of let it be known that was, I think, the extent to which the city will tolerate it. I would actually, because of some of that, I'd like to, in addition to the 6-month report back on the parking survey, maybe have it come back as a full report back on overall compliance with all of the conditions of approval and the overall sort of operations of the business establishment, with the understanding that if things are not going well, we do have the right to revoke. I presume we have that right to revoke at a report back. So I'd like that to be able to be a more comprehensive hearing at 6 months, not just on the parking, but sort of on the totality of compliance with the project as a whole. But I do want to reiterate, I think this is a higher and better use than what's been there in the past. I think it's the type of business that is very much in need, and I think there's an opportunity for this to be a really cool, interesting project in Albany. And so I do want to give, again, on balance, that benefit of a doubt that things can pull through and this can be a really great, successful project for Albany. But, we do need to make sure that the rules are being followed and that things are executed according to all of our conditions of approval. So, with that, I'll leave it at that. Those are sort of my thoughts.
All right, well, I have to make some comments, and I have a different point, a different perspective on it, I think. Okay, let's see, where to start. So I think the issue in front of us tonight is really one of process more than anything else. In fact, I look at it as a process issue, very much so. And there's no way that I could support approving the application with the conditions that are written here now. I think this project has an incomplete application. I don't even think it should be here in front of us. I think that we do not have plans that show the C3, and that should be required. I think we do not have plans that shows the FAR being complied with. And until we have plans that we can review under our own zoning ordinance regulations, we should not be acting on this. I think it would be a serious mistake, my own personal opinion here, to go ahead and approve the project with the conditions of approval that defer these questions to a later date of the C3 regulations and how it's going to comply with it. Complying with those may change the entire project. And then furthermore, we don't know what the FAR is going to be, and they're exceeding the FAR requirements with sort of unspecified space. Furthermore, we kind of have an applicant here in front of us that's flaky. You come to us, you have different ideas every meeting. Even tonight, well, we think we'll open it, we'll close at 7, but maybe we'll come back later and close again. I really have concerns about this project, and I've had concerns from the beginning about how the parking is going to work and how the odors are going to be managed. This project could become a real problem for the city of Albany and for Albany staff. It could be, I love the idea. I have to say that right from the beginning. I really like the idea. I think that you may be onto a very brilliant business strategy here, and one that will work very well for you with having the commercial kitchen serving the food truck industry. And I think that we may be providing a great service to the region by having that business here in Albany, and I like that. But your plans have been changing as we've seen every time, and you've been through several architects, and I'm worried about that. That worries me, and I would just, no way could I approve this project right now. I just emphatic no. The conditions of approval are written so that you know, the city will require you to meet the C3. They'll require you to modify the project to meet the FAR. I think you should be doing that now. And the next time you come to us, you should come to us with a set of plans that meets the C3, has the C3 issues worked out, and has a project that meets our requirements. Okay, that's my main spiel. Then, with respect to the conditions of approval, if it is approved, I may be the only dissenter here, I don't know. If it's approved, I am very worried about how you're going to manage the parking, because I don't see you managing the development of the project very well, and I'm very worried about how you're going to manage the parking. So I think coming to us for a 6-month review might not be good enough. And I would like staff, if we approve this tonight, I would like the commission to delegate to the community development director the authority to force you to modify your project anytime when there is a serious parking problem coming here. I don't know how you're going to manage all of the employees of the food trucks coming in the morning, being there for a few hours, and the food trucks going out. You are going to have to have a traffic manager there. And that person will be a key person to run your business. If it works, if that person is a good person and can really do it, it might work. It probably will work. And probably the restaurant probably will be compatible parking-wise with the operation of the food truck business. But it's too close for me to know that. And 6 months is too short a time for the review of that. That's going to have to be almost real-time review, week by week, day by day. How are they doing down there with the parking management of the food trucks? It may be that you'll build up over a year, and that you'll start out with serving 25 food trucks. That's no problem. You even have the capacity to do that. Then you go to 40, no problem. You have the capacity to do that. I don't know how it's going to work, but I think we as a commission should now, if we approve this, delegate to the community development director the ability to have oversight with you and have the authority to force you to pull back on the number of food trucks you're serving, and in order so that we do not have a huge traffic congestion down there on Cleveland Avenue and overflow that messes up the other businesses nearby, and or too much street parking, whatever the problems might be. So I'm really kind of worried about that. So what I would do tonight is I would continue the project and instruct staff to send you an incomplete letter saying your application is not complete. When you bring us a complete application with plans that show what you're going to do for C3 and plans that show how you're going to do your construction that meets the FAR ratio, then come back to us with a new set of plans and we will start processing your application. And it does involve more commission meetings. I don't have a problem with that. I think that's our job, to be here in the commission. Now, suppose we vote to deny. It's about the same, kind of the same thing. But I'm worried about that. I'm worried about that. Two things. You have the right to appeal a denial to the city council. Why should we as a planning commission dump this in the city council's lap? We're the ones who have the authority and are here to be able to make these decisions. These are planning decisions. The city council is not used to planning decisions. I think the city council is going to want to have our input on this decision, and I think a denial would be a mistake. And so we deny it, and you appeal to the city council. The city council says, well, I don't know what to do. We'll follow the Planning and Zoning Commission. They deny it. Then you have a denial that is litigable, potentially. I mean, I may be really stressing it here. But I think that the buck on this matter should be withheld with the Planning Commission, and that the right thing to do, unfortunately for staff, I'm sorry, would be to continue this item and not approve it, not approve your project until you get it right. So that's my thinking on the matter. I don't know what other commissions will say.
Can I?
I think
it's just staff discussion right now.
I think that we should have discussion. I think the public hearing is closed, but
Yeah,
it's up to you.
I had a question for staff on Commissioner Donaldson's comments. For the C3 requirements, just because we haven't had, at least since I've been on the commission, projects of this size that have triggered that, is that typically part of sort of the planning submittal that's reviewed at this stage, or is that typically handled sort of post-commission review during the building permitting?
I'm going to defer that to Jeff.
On a project of this scale, typically, we would expect to be able to bring to you a site plan that shows, at least at a conceptual level or schematic level, how the drainage program would work. Smaller projects, we deal with that at the building permit because it tends to be more technical.
Okay, but that is part of the sort of normal other types of projects of, I mean, not that we have a ton of this scale, but things like a Target project, for example, they would have had that level of detail submitted at a commission level review.
The most recent project that we've done that had that scale of stormwater treatment was the University Village mixed-use project, and that had all that is part of the planning application.
Sorry, before you sit down, Jeff, just to be clear, is that something that is that's objectively required at the submittal stage? Because I do have concerns about kind of post hoc, just imposing new conditions on what it takes to be deemed complete. And since this has already been determined to be complete, I'm a little concerned about the approach that Commissioner Donaldson is suggesting.
In the technical guidance document, it does recommend, I think it uses the word recommendation, but I could double check that real quick. It does indicate that the overall approach to stormwater management should be part of the planning application. This has been a challenging project, and we're balancing the time we spend with this and other projects, and so we're just trying to keep the ball moving forward a little bit. Completely respect Commissioner Donaldson's approach to this, and we can deal with it as best we can. It's just picking priorities. This was processing an application of 4 different hearings is not normally how we like to invest our time, but we can do it. And yes, to answer your question, it is in the technical guidance. So if you wanted to make a finding of continuance based on that, you would have support for that.
Is it my turn to speak, or are we going to let the applicant?
I think we should give him a chance to respond, but maybe after everyone talks. Should we do that? Or what do you think?
Depends on how far it's going to go.
There's just 3 things I wanted to
You get really quickly what you're going to talk about, don't say, but what do you want to respond to Doug?
Can I interrupt and make sure that this is at the microphone so it's recorded? This is going to be an important conversation to have for the record.
So we do not agree that we're subject to C3. However, we are willing to throw ourselves on the mercy of Jeff or anybody to pick any of the solutions. We can bring 8 solutions. Anyone they want to pick is fine. We're willing to commit to that in writing, okay? But we don't agree that we're C3, but we're willing to do all of the water treatment anyway at any standard that any one of your people wants to. We're willing to throw ourselves on the mercy of you guys after the fact and blindly commit to whatever they want to do. But we're not C3.
So thank you for that clarification.
Let me address, if I could, 3 things. We've had a lot of meetings regarding the C3. We had a meeting with Jeff, and Jeff's here, I'm glad he is. He told us that we will deal with C3 since we're negotiating with Mr. Lombardi and C3, not pumping it or pumping it. hundreds of gallons of water going up on the street, which was not going to work. Jeff even proposed to Mr. Lombardi, Craig Lombardi, that you extend the water main down the street at a cost of $100,000 plus. Okay, so you had come up with the comment, is there anything we can do that makes sense? Now we have come to the consensus that we can do a bioswale at the back, allowing us to clean the water first and drain it onto Union Pacific. This has taken meetings and everything to get to this point. Jeff also told us we did not have to have that plan done accurately right now because we're in negotiations on how we're going to do it. That's why it's not included. And so we're putting engineers on this every day. We have a great proposal for Jeff in the next couple of days that we think we can solve all of it. The parking, we agreed last time we were at the meeting, I believe you brought it up, Mr. Donaldson, to have a full-time parking attendant.
no,
I agreed to that.
That's great.
And I agree. I said, you're right, 100%.
That's great.
Because we don't know how busy it's going to be out there. Okay,
Yeah.
also, cars go by that street 60, 70 miles an hour.
No.
We have to be careful. I'm not changing my mind regarding the restaurant opening. Okay, we have to figure out how these trucks are gonna, we have to manage the trucks. Okay, that's what I wanted to say there. I fired an architect for not having right measurements or doing timelines. And that was in the beginning of the project. So I haven't gone through several architects, I went through one. Okay, and I've got a good one now. He wasn't required to come here today because we were told both by Ann Hesh and also Jeff Bond that we were going for approval today, and it'll be conditional. If anything else that you wanted, it would be conditional on those items. And that's why we didn't even change the plan to meet the FARs. We did fix the FARs. Jeff helped us fix the FARs by calling part of the upstairs storage. Simple. Half of it is storage, meeting the FAR. The rest of that second story we need for the lid for the restaurant. We're calling it storage. It will be storage. It's unconditioned space. So we had agreed to that. It's not on the print yet. Okay, that's all I wanted to say.
Thank you. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, if you'll indulge me, I'd like to correct the record. First of all, it's not a negotiation. There's a code. Our job is to ensure compliance with the code, subject to your review. We're not negotiating whether or not it meets the code. With respect to the...
What, you're talking about FAR now?
Anything.
Oh, okay.
Anything.
Okay.
We don't negotiate...
C3 and FAR, okay.
We don't negotiate away the city's requirements.
Yeah.
I want to make that clear. With respect to the extra FAR space, we have never discussed that as storage. It's dead space. It needs to be closed off. It needs to have a sign that says it's dead space.
Dead space, unusable space, yeah.
Unusable space.
Walled in.
Yep.
Thank you. Ian.
Yeah, thank you. Well, I'd like to start by saying the use seems appropriate for this location. It seems like a good idea. I've been struggling a bit with some of the issues, and this is my first time commenting on this, so I might repeat things other people have said or other questions they've asked before, so please bear with me. You know, I have a real hard time with the illegal, unpermitted work you've done. You know, I drove by there the other day. I wasn't really sure what I would see. You know, there are storefront windows on the south side. The doors are there. You know, and I'm just, frankly, I'm appalled by that. I'm appalled by the whole build-out. Did you build out the entire interior?
No.
Framed out the whole interior?
No, we were stopped.
You were stopped, but that looks like you're pretty darn close. These photos really look like you're pretty darn close to a complete build-out. What structural engineering plans did you use? What architectural plans did you use? Who did the work?
That's all in the...
No one inspected the work? No one vetted the plans? Do you know how much liability and risk you're assuming by doing all that? Frankly, I find it appalling, but, and I really have a hard time seeing how some of that work could be retroactively approved and inspected.
Well, nothing's closed.
Did you do concrete work?
No, not yet.
I don't see how you can do.
You can't cover any concrete until we
We can't get into a back and forth. I think if there's
Okay,
questions,
sorry, all
that's
right, all right.
fine.
Well, I'll back up.
We just want to make sure it's.
Any concrete work
captured.
can't be inspected. If there are these point loads, shear walls, they all need new concrete work. I don't know, it seems to me like a lot of this work is going to have to come out to be done properly. So anyway, backing up a little bit more, you have totally preempted the planning and building permit process. And to me, that is wholly unacceptable. And that throws into doubt a lot of other things with this project. And it just makes me not want to approve anything until I see it on the plans, and I see compliance on the plans. You know, I have a lot of things. I agree with the staff on a number of issues. I think the C3 should be required. I will agree with the staff on that. I see dirt out there on the site that you're claiming was paving. All I see is dirt, so I don't see how that could be a previously pervious space on the south side converted to, you know, or previously impervious converted to pervious. Excuse me, I'm speaking. You know, I think the egress across the property line is totally unacceptable. I think showing any work across the property line is unacceptable. We don't have the right to grant any authority to build on the neighbor's property or grant access to it. If there's anything crossing the property line on your plans, I think it should be removed. I also question the parking, the whole concept. I mean, the one thing that no one's really brought up is the fact that you're going to have how many delivery trucks there per day as well. I don't really see how they're loading, unloading, getting in and out. I have other issues with the site plan. I think the ADA parking should be next to the building, not across the parking lot. I don't see how you can expect disabled people to cross a very, very busy parking lot, a busy parking lot by design. I also have issues with the garbage area. I don't see how that's going to be accessible if you have 2 trucks parked there. I think that should also be closer to the building, so you don't have staff, personnel walking across a busy, busy parking lot. I don't quite understand the internal circulation, how you're going to get your deliveries and materials in there. What else? You know, I think I want to see everything on the plan before I would approve it. And, you know, this unpermitted work is a huge red flag for me. And beyond that, let's see, I had some architectural issues. If you could bring up the front elevation, please.
Did you want the east elevation?
East elevation, that would be the front, right, the street side? Yeah, right there. So basically all those low windows are being covered up. I think that's what's happening. Well, I disagree with that. Not that they should remain, but that there are no windows on that wall. I think you're creating this big, big blank wall on the street side. You have a big food prep area. What I would like to see would be a high bank of windows across that whole front of the food bank area. I think we'd make it a much better space to work in, plus give some relief to this big blank wall in the front. Your bedroom has to have egress windows, it has light requirements. There has to be some sort of egress window for your bedroom. I think that should go on the front. And then beyond that, you know, it looks to me like, how do you know where the restaurant is? I'm driving by, I don't really know where your restaurant is. You know, to me, the diagram of the restaurant and the residence are backwards. I think the restaurant should be on the street side, the residence should be on the back. I think there should be an entrance to the restaurant on the front corner there. You know, that's my architectural advice. I think this whole facade is a big blank metal facade is not acceptable. So I'm really troubled by this project, and I'm really not willing to support it until I actually see everything on the plans that are really a condition of approval. I don't really feel comfortable kicking the can down to the building department to then have to figure all that out. I think it should be on the plans before we approve it.
Thank you. Well, okay, my comments are, I think some people spoke, I mean, we really liked the project when it came in. We thought it was a great idea, and it was really interesting. I think we all were affected by the work done out of permit. Well, we've already spoken to that, so I'm not going to go to it. I think Doug mentioned that the drawings are kind of missing pieces, and they come in there, and I think to me it manifests itself in the landscape drawings, which are conflicting and not clear. Now I'm hearing that they're actually not even relevant because you're going to be doing the C3 or the planting. But the hand-drawn plan, for instance, shows a lemon tree right where the Monterey pine that we're trying to protect is. So, I mean, just those kind of things aren't coordinated. Now, I don't expect 100% drawings. These are schematic designs. And I step back and I think how I would do it professionally, and I know that I would do a lot more than this for an entitlement package. But given that, we've had this discussion 3 or 4 times, and we don't have an Albany requirement for a fleshed out landscape plan, so I can't hold you to that. I think you've spoken to a lot of these things, but they don't always show up on the plans, and that's been one of our frustrations. But I've gone through it enough where I'm probably okay supporting it, but with a long list of conditions of approval. And one of my questions to staff is, if we approve it with conditions like a fleshed out, do we get to see the landscape plan afterwards? Because it's a big plan to just go straight through. So we have a chance of commenting on that?
Absolutely. You could include a condition that requires it to come back to the commission for further review.
Okay. That would be great. For the, as far as the, Ian mentioned the design of the restaurant. I think the grade change requires it be down on the lower part, but maybe some other issues you want to comment on. I think, and Commissioner Waddy mentioned that after 6 months we get to do a full review and possibly real. I think that's difficult because they go through all this work and build it, and then 6 months later we're revoking it. I mean, that's too much of a risk to ask for. So I'm not sure if I want to put that in there. So that's kind of, those are my thoughts. Now, where do we go from here?
Well, could I just ask a question on that point, that last point? I mean, there's just underlying kind of compliance and code enforcement authority, right? So if there was, I mean, maybe you can just speak to that, because I'm just curious kind of what the options are and what sort of safeguards are already in place in terms of reviewing and ensuring compliance. And then maybe we can take that as our jumping off point for what might be appropriate to put on top of it.
Yeah, so in regards to all conditional use permits, the commission has complete discretion to call up any permit for review to determine if the operating standards and permit is in compliance with what was approved. You could do that at any time. We've had other projects where we add specificity from the operation commencement date, but in this case, you do have that authority quite broadly defined for you.
Thanks.
Okay. So could you run through the list of conditions again? The current list that you guys had.
So we have 5 conditions overall, and I can bring them up.
Special conditions, yeah.
Yeah, there were 5.
Page 28, no, that's not right.
So the floor area ratio requires basically the reduction in overall area, and that a detail be provided to staff in advance of the building permit to ensure compliance. Special condition 2 requires the submittal of the the clean water plan that would also be submitted prior to building permit for staff review. In regards to the unpermitted construction, we can, yeah, Chris has the specific language here. But we would require that a consulting design professional, either a licensed architect or engineer in the state of California, provide supplemental documentation in regards to what's been done. We're also interested in receiving requiring recommendations from a geotechnical engineer and structural plans prepared by a structural engineer. Compliance with the condition would really be at the discretion of the building official and any technical experts that the city retains to complete a peer review. Additionally, we would collect double fees as part of that, which again is standard on any unpermitted construction, whether it's something of this scale or a homeowner doing a modest repair on an existing home. In regards to county health, this actually is just kind of formalizing what is a standard practice, and that is that we do not accept plans in advance of county health approval. So any food establishment is required to come in at the time of building permit submittal with fully stamped approved plans provided by the health department. So we're not going to bifurcate the process and allow the building submittal in advance of county health completing their review. And then in regards to the parking, that is to come back to you with a 6-month compliance report and assessment as to how the on-site parking has been managed.
And that's 6 months from like certificate of
commencement.
occupancy? Okay.
Yeah, date of operation commencing.
Okay.
Okay. So I guess I should open up the floor for other conditions. And I would say I would like to add I don't need, let's say, a advanced design, let's say a design development level landscape plan.
At what point do you want to see that?
Before you do that, Chris, maybe you don't need to, but I'd like to move the continuance of the project to a date uncertain, basically. And that's my position. I don't know if I have support for that, if I have a second or not. But I think that's the best thing I think that's the right thing to do in my point of view. It's not ready yet. The application is not complete, doesn't meet our requirements, and it should be revised and brought back to us when they're ready.
Okay, so is that motion on the floor?
I think I have a
I
second.
would second that.
Can I just ask a clarifying question, just to make sure we're crystal clear? Is part of your continuance request that this not come back before us until effectively most of those conditions of approval that are relevant, such as the FAR, the C3, all of that are part and parcel of the application in front of us, and are not having to be applied as a condition of approval?
Correct, yeah. That's right.
Okay.
Before we vote on that, I guess I wanted to just address what Commissioner Donaldson said about the denial, your concerns about denying it, because I do think that, I appreciate where you're both coming from on this. I also think that, staff has asked us, I think, as clearly as they possibly can, for us to take action on this project. And I think I think we're kind of kicking the can down the road by not taking action. I think it's completely within our discretion, if the votes are there, to say no to it. I don't like the idea of continuing it, because I do think that the applicant has, rights in the situation. And under the logic that, the city council doesn't get involved in planning stuff, then we would never deny anything. And so I guess I would those are my concerns about continuing it. I'm still sticking with my earlier position in favor of support, but if there is desire not to move this forward, I would just encourage the commission to think about a denial instead of a continuance.
If I may, I would support a continuance. I mean, I would like to give them a chance to make this project successful. I don't think it's out of reach by any means.
I agree.
But I think you've got to respect the process. I have serious concerns about the structural work you've done there. And I'm not sure that just having it surveyed by a licensed architect is enough. I mean,
But wouldn't you say, though, there's nothing we can do on this board to check that? That has to be done by professionals.
I know, I guess I'm a little frustrated with
Yeah,
that, but,
so there's a
you know,
frustration.
I just,
Curse Clausen, do you know Curse Clausen? Clausen Engineering in Berkeley?
yeah, I think they're an excellent firm.
He's our structural.
Well, I mean, they're going to have to review every nail, every screw, every bolt, every piece of wood, and you're going to, and if you haven't done concrete work, I don't know how you can do shear walls and point loads without having the concrete work done first. So there again, the cart is before the horse.
To me, that's,
You know, I'm willing to go for a continuance, but I would really like to see a very strong effort on your part to meet these conditions before, you know, on the plans as we see them. And the FAR, for me, is also a big issue. I don't see why we're allowing anything built out over the FAR. You know, I'm just concerned. I don't know the extent of the work that's been done inside. Have you already built out the floor areas beyond the FAR that's allowed? I mean, I don't know why that should not be required to be removed, anything built out over the FAR, but I don't know if that's something within our ability.
I think, hold on. So the FAR issue is, I think, was discussed, so we're clear on that. The inspection issue is, you know, we just have to, they're complying with what the city requires if you do work out of inspection or without permitting. There's a penalty to be paid, and they're paying that penalty.
Mm-hmm.
So that's, to me, that's, we don't like it, but it's water over the bridge. We can't keep hitting them with it. The FAR, to me, the way it was described, it sounds like it's a kind of an easy fix and shouldn't be a real deal stopper.
Right, I agree. I hear you.
The parking is a complex, very complex parking. I don't know if you can come up with a plan until it really starts to happen.
That's what I'm saying. I think if you approve, I would like to see a condition added to give the community development director some ability to issue orders that will help manage the parking, to make sure, issue orders to ensure the parking is properly managed.
Oh,
That's the idea. I don't want it to wait for 6 months and then have us review it. I want us to delegate that parking if we're going to, that parking management dance, let the community development director have the power to review that and order changes in the operation of the project if necessary to protect the city's interests.
I think,
And I haven't written up a draft or anything like that, but that's generally my idea.
I think
It
Commissioner-
might be fine. It might be fine, but I really think that it's risky.
On the parking, I just want to point out that our client load is going to grow slowly. So we'll start with 10, go up to 15,
great.
go up to 30, and we'll have lots of time to watch it
great.
and to adjust it.
And then there
maybe
won't
even
be
to
any problem.
And maybe even to repaint the parking lot where they are and all that. So it's not something that's going to happen quick. It may take
No,
us 6 or 8 months to fill
You
up.
may well be right. I appreciate that. And I hope that's the case, yeah.
I think Commissioner McLeod had a really good comment on the garbage recycling area. And I think there are some refinements, but I'm willing to, so I know we're still in discussion, we still have your motion on the table, but I'm willing to add more to the condition of approval and then let it pass. That's kind of where I'm standing. So any more discussion on this item?
Yeah, I just had one last question. Just rereading the staff report where you guys have the analysis of the FAR, and it looks like your breakdown is that what's labeled as sort of mezzanine storage is roughly the 2,000 square foot space. What does that align with on the plans? Is it the area designated equipment? Or, because it looks like in the mezzanine level, you've got the mezzanine space that has restrooms accessed off of that space, and then there's a demising wall to the equipment half.
Yes.
And so is the equipment half the roughly 2,000 square foot space that's bulleted out on, let's see, this is page 5 of the staff report says 2,056 square foot mezzanine storage.
Where's the plan there? It's not that space at the back of the residence, is it?
No, that space is, so here, there's the
Page
equipment.
A4 of the plans.
Right there with the red
Yeah.
X to it.
So is it the equipment space? That's the quote-unquote mezzanine? Sir, I actually, this is just a question for staff. You don't need to get involved. Is that the space that's associated with the 2,000 square foot
And the
square footage?
upper level.
Yeah. The space designated equipment? Okay.
Okay.
I guess some of the, I guess there's currently a motion on the floor. I don't know if maybe we go with that first, see what happens, and then,
Okay, let's, any more discussion on this item?
The motion has been seconded.
Okay. Vote in favor of the motion to deny.
To continue.
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 All in favor, say aye.
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 All in, not in favor, say nay.
Nay.
So that's voted down.
I am happy to make an alternative motion. And I might need a little help here from things that have been said by others, but a motion to approve with all of staff's conditions, with an additional condition that at that 6-month parking report back, we get sort of a full report back of full compliance with everything, even things we haven't identified right now, as well as operations. I would personally like to add an additional condition that the project not be allowed to build out the space titled equipment, since that exceeds the FAR. To me, that almost negates the problem. I don't want something walled off that says do not access. Let's not build it if it's over the FAR, period. And that seems like a nice, clean line in the sand to draw. So that space just shouldn't be framed out, shouldn't be built out, should be open to the sky, be a double height ceiling from the bottom below. And the third additional condition to add, Commissioner Kent, I would lean on you relative to the landscape plan comments that you had made about us seeing back a fully sort of vetted
Development level.
DD level.
landscape Plan of the,
And that would be submitted prior to the building permit submittal for full commission review.
yeah.
Great.
And I would just like to
Well,
add,
enough before that we can make comment and they can incorporate it, so it doesn't hold up their process.
so you would allow them to submit for building permit at the same time that they provide the landscape plan, and then we just take it concurrently?
Well, if they submit the building permit and we make comment on the landscape plan, then it holds up the whole permit, does it not?
It's going to be in plan check for a while. It's not
Okay,
that
then
difficult
that
for
will-
us to schedule it for review.
So long as we can review, comment, have comments incorporated prior to issuance of the building permit?
That's right.
And the only other thing I would add, we mentioned that there is this broad brushstroke of discretion to call up use permits for review. I'd like to include a condition that just captures that from our discussion tonight, that you reserve the right to call the use permit up for review at any time.
That's fine. It sounds like that's kind of a statement of existing law, right? Or existing
I just wanna make
requirements,
sure
but
that
you want to
it's-
put it in
we
there.
get it in there.
That's fine. And I would also be amenable to a condition along the lines that Commissioner Donaldson was suggesting with respect to parking management. I'm not sure exactly how that would be worded or framed, but in general, it seems consistent with the community development director's authority in any case to review and
Great. Thank
ensure compliance with parking management.
That's, I appreciate that.
So,
Great. So
I would second that motion with all of the additional conditions that have been identified from our discussion.
All in favor? Say aye.
Aye.
All
No.
in favor?
No.
2 nays and 2 ayes, 3 ayes, 2 nays. The motion passes.
Okay.
Right.
So the application is passed. You have, I guess it's still open to appeal. So you don't have any story polls up or anything, but,
I think I just want to absorb the pass.
okay. I mean, others outside, not you, but others could appeal. Yeah.
14-day appeal period.
There's a 14-day appeal period. Thank you, Doug.
Just for the record, we do intend to be entirely cooperative, and we're going to do a great job on each one of these, including parking and those sort of kinds of things.
Appreciate that, but we need to see it. Okay, moving on the agenda. Where are we? New business. Item 7.1, proposed code amendments to Table 20.24.020, 2A, site regulations by district residential, Table 2A, and site regulations by district non-residential, Table 2B. Could you?
So we've previously come to you with changes in regards to side yard encroachments. We have not yet scheduled that for council review. We have come back to you with yet another amendment to those development standards tables in the zoning code that we wanted to bring to your attention. We've also included a resolution of intention to proposed amendment for that section of the code. So as the commission is aware, we have multiple development standards that we look at when we're looking at both residential and commercial development. This includes density in the form of dwelling units per acre, floor area ratio, lot area for dwelling unit, lot size, lot width, coverage, building height, setbacks, building height, and usable open space. So effectively, we have a footnote within the table. While we have density that's established by dwelling units per acre, we also have a table that further restricts that and assigns a minimum lot area to a unit, and that is how a unit count is established for a multifamily project. In the commercial development standards table, it defaults to the footnote in the residential standards table, which is footnote 9, and we can pull it up on the screen here. It's this table that provides land area and unit size. Even though there are requirements for usable open space independent of this, it effectively limits the number of units based on the land area. And so at the last meeting, you looked at a proposal for a project that would create 4 units on an infill lot in the Solano Commercial Zoning District. Strictly speaking, if that was looked at today under these standards, a 4-unit project could not be achieved. It would be limited only to 3 units because the lot is 3,750 square feet. As I'm sure the commission is well aware, both in the work that you do here as well as in your professional capacities, you're aware that the state is talking quite a bit about housing laws, and every year we seem to be getting new housing laws that we have to keep up with. This is a proposed cleanup in the code that would effectively allow the density to be determined based on the dwelling units per acre provision, and we're proposing to eliminate this footnote from the table. And so if that is something that the commission proceeds forward with a resolution of intention, we would then come back to you with the formal changes for a formal recommendation to City Council, and we would take that with a side yard encroachments provision to the council as one complete package.
Okay. So, are we voting? We're not really voting on this then.
It's a resolution of intention. So what that does is you are
Discuss it.
effectively committing to
Have a public hearing.
amend the code,
Right, okay.
and then we would come back to you with a more formal, public hearing notice, newspaper notice, so on and so forth.
Can I just ask one question of staff? So is this, and you kind of preface this as it's a bit of a cleanup, so is effectively the intent, as far as most people understood the density regulations in the Solano Commercial District, to effectively being, staying the same, everyone's intent, or are we changing the sort of intent of the density controls?
So the density controls, for all intents and purposes, are staying the same. You have 20 units up to 63 units per acre. That is going to remain unchanged. This, in my perspective, and others may disagree with me, but this conflicts with that because it doesn't correlate. If you take the range of the last project, you effectively have, I think, when I did the math, it's like 1.75 up to 5 units per acre on a 3750 lot. This only allows you up to 3 because there's a land area that's assigned based on the lot size. Mm-hmm. So that upper standard effectively is inapplicable based on this.
And but this affects only the R3.
This would affect R3 as well as our commercial districts, so SPC and San Pablo Commercial and Solano Commercial, because within the commercial development standards table, that defaults back to this footnote 9.
Okay.
So that this, in terms of the zoning districts, it would affect R3 and the Solano Commercial and San Pablo Commercial.
I see. So just to make sure I'm understanding it, it's basically two different provisions in the code that are almost the inverse of one another, effectively.
Right.
That seems strange.
So this is just reverting to how most people would probably typically understand density. I mean, maybe I'm making an assumption there, but typically, if I'm looking at density, the dwelling units per acre is the metric that I think is kind of what's commonly understood.
That's correct.
And so this is I thought this was really interesting because I actually wasn't aware of this footnote before either, and it does seem to be sort of I'm sure there was a reason for it when it was adopted, but it seems like the effect is to have sort of an artificial control, like another layer over the density, which I'm not sure is in line with the city's current policies. Sorry.
Right. And just one thing to add with that, we looked back in the code. This is actually a standard that goes back to the 70s, and it carried forward when the code update was prepared in 2004. So this has actually been on the books for quite some time.
I've been here a long time, but I haven't been here that long, so I'm speculating a little bit. But my guess is that the original intent of this sliding scale was to create an incentive for developers to buy surrounding properties and consolidate and build larger projects. And that's definitely a concept, I think, from an earlier era. We don't see that happening in Albany now, and I don't know that we necessarily would want to encourage that. It's the reality of how the kind of developer we see today is individual property owners want to make an investment on their property, and this is constraining the number of units, not the size of the building, but the number of units, which is counterproductive to what the state wants us to do. So I'm sorry to speculate about the original intent, but that's the only thing I think as a practical matter, that's what it does, is it gets people to look at the properties around them and build a larger scale project.
And just to reiterate, we have separate standards for usable outdoor open space. So even though there is this land requirement, it doesn't necessarily dictate anything related to usable outdoor space.
I worked on the Zoning Code Revision Commission in 2004 when we were redoing the Zoning Commission. I vaguely remember discussions of that, and then Jeff is correct about the idea of incentivizing lot assemblage, and I remember it for the R3, there were talks about that for sure. And at that time, going back historically, Jerome Blank had assembled a lot of lots in town, and that was a common practice, I think, in the 60s. And that had happened a lot, and that's how the Safeway site was created. And I think some of the multifamily homes we have along the El Cerrito Plaza boundary up there on the north side of Brighton were assembled that way. Lots were assembled and larger buildings were built. And that is exactly the thought process that was discussed, I know, in one meeting with respect to the R3 of keeping this there. The idea was encouraging people in the R3 zone to build larger buildings, multifamily buildings, and discourage the retention of single-family homes that were already in the R3 zone. I remember that discussion.
I guess, is there any, I'm going to open the public comment here. Does anyone from the public like to speak on this issue?
Clay Larson, Albany resident. I think this is a gigantic oops in response to the failure to bring any of this up during the review of the project in Masonic and Solano. But I also recall something differently. It was a couple of years where I went to as many zoning code meetings as Doug did.
It's true.
And I recall, first place, the 63 units per acre density is very high.
Yeah.
At the time, it was much higher. I haven't looked at it lately. Much higher than any other city around here, and that includes, dense, multi-story downtown areas. And so I think this was a way to kind of gradually run up on it. So you didn't get that full 63 until you had, 20,000, a fairly large lot. And I think that was the logic. So I think that needs to be considered. That there's proportionality and there's scale. I'm not sure it works. What works at 1 acre works at a very small lot. So that's the only comment. The other comment I wanted to, it's unrelated to this, so it's quick, changing to good of the order here. I missed the opening, the consent calendar item on massage parlors. It was actually just an addition of service, and I don't particularly care about that. But I know that the state, and probably not its finest legislative hour, changed the laws to try to create a state bureaucracy to control this. It was a flop. And they changed it again in 2014, 2015. In response to the original change, we eviscerated our code regarding to massage parlors. I don't believe we've done anything to restore that language.
That's not correct. We never amended the code in response to the legislation that went into effect in 2009. We simply put it on hold based on the guidance of the city attorney at the time, and the state effectively limited our ability to apply zoning standards. However, when the law reverted back in 2015, restoring our authority, we effectively regained our right to enforce zoning laws when it comes to massage establishments. So this is actually the first application we've had in 4 years for a massage establishment.
That's not my recollection, but I'll go back and look. So you believe you still have the code that authorizes the fire chief to make certain, all that language is still there?
Yeah, and that's actually contained in Chapter 5, which is not the purview of the Planning and Zoning Commission. There's provisions in there that delegate authority to the police chief for background checks.
I'll check.
Thank you. Anyone else? Yes. Yeah, please come.
I'm the architect for the Masonic project that Anne referenced. My name is Richard Tapp. And we were here before a couple of meetings ago and had some supportive comments for a preliminary review. And the one thing I just wanted to say is, as far as we weren't aware of this footnote, and it is conflicting because based on other code areas we can do the 4 units, and this one then limits us to 3. And I just wanted to reference that theoretically we could build the same envelope, the same sized building, and just create one huge unit and therefore comply with this footnote 9 of the 1970s. And so that's not what we want to do, obviously. It's not what I think the city wants to have done. And I know it's definitely not what the state wants to have done. And you're trying to increase the number of units and not decrease them. So it seems illogical and impractical that you could build a huge building and just reduce the number of units. And there's a conflict in the code anyway. It needs to be resolved one way or the other. And I think it should be resolved based on common sense and what the future guidelines for the city is trying to encourage more units and more smaller units which are more affordable. Thank you.
Thank you. More speakers? That's it. Close public hearing. Any more comments from the commission on this?
Just add my 2 cents. This seems completely logical to me. I kind of had the same thoughts that I always think about density as, dwelling units per lot area or per acre or something of the sort. So this makes a lot of sense. I also think that, we've got enough controls in place through our design review, through the other sort of built form controls of height and setbacks and all of that. And I also think just the market in Albany still drives family-sized units that I'm not terribly concerned about, people coming in and, building a 20-unit studio building in the heart of Albany. I don't think that's what the market wants here. So for all of those reasons, it seems like a very normal, reasonable cleanup, and I support it.
I don't know. I think the market's there. If they build it, they'll buy it. But whether or not it'll pencil out, I think is the question. Yeah, right.
And I would say even if the market is there to build 20 studios, I'm not opposed to that either, if that's what the need is. But I agree with everything Commissioner Waddy said. It seems logical, and there are lots of other development standards and controls in place to prevent, things that are out of scale.
I would agree with everything you've said so far. It makes sense to eliminate these interior conflicts in the code, and it seems like we should be encouraging more units. I'm 100% for that. So I have no problem with this.
Yeah.
My only other comment would be that, and it's got to come from another process, I suppose, but just looking at density in general on San Pablo and perhaps on Solano, raising building heights, maximum heights and densities are, but I think that's another discussion for another day. But I think we're going in the right direction, let me put it that way.
Yeah, my take on it is I'm normally cautious about changing the zoning code because I was on CCRAC when we wrote the last one, so I have personal stake in it, I guess. So I'm cautious about it. I don't have, and I agree with Clay's comment as well about the fact that 63 units is very high, has been high for a long time. But my recollection is that there was talk about something to incentivize the assemblage of lots because we had so many small lots in Albany. It hasn't really happened since the zoning code was approved. We've had very few lots, if any, that have been consolidated to build larger buildings, and I don't think I really have a problem with this. And I can support this change.
I would make a motion to approve the resolution of intention.
Yes, and it's Resolution 2019-02.
Resolution 2019-02.
Okay, all in favor? Oh, so second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 None opposed.
Okay.
Motion passes. Chair and vice reorganization.
Yes, thank you for being our chair for the past year.
that.
And Megan, thank you for being our vice chair. The time has come, though, now that all of the appointments have been ratified and all of you have been sworn in, where we can reorganize who will serve as chair in 2019.
Anyone want to be chair?
So, yes, please step backwards who doesn't want to.
I'll defer to all of you who have more experience on the board for that.
Elizabeth? Elizabeth?
I'm willing. Are you not wanting another year?
No, I will do it on demand, but I definitely think that.
Heavy is the head
Actually, I think
wears
that
the crown.
Commissioner Waddy and both Megan here are more of a natural at it than I am. So,
I would nominate
no
Commissioner Waddy to
okay.
become the chair.
Sure. I
been
don't know what I need to
she's
do
been
to
nominated?
accept, but
Yes, Commissioner Waddy is
I don't know
ready.
if we have a process.
Megan, did you nominate?
I did,
Okay,
yes.
great.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, all in
All in
favor?
favor of Commissioner Waddy becoming chairperson, chairperson, chair,
sure.
Chair or vice chair?
chair, right?
I
that's what I
was
thought.
nominating
We
for
need
chair.
we need a vice chair, too.
We will need a vice chair, but we can take that.
All right, let's get the chair
separately.
done with. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Great.
Okay.
That's unanimous approval. So now taking nominations for vice chair. I would like to nominate Commissioner Megan, what am I not?
Commissioner Megan, yes, that's me. Miss Megan.
Okay.
I'm happy.
Jennings, that's
I'm happy to keep doing it. I think I only had one meeting where I had to, that you were absent and I had to step up, so I'm relatively untested.
You do a fine job.
Okay.
So did we have a second on Commissioner
I'll
Jennings?
second.
Thank you. All in favor? Oh, would you accept
Oh,
this?
sure, I accept.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Okay.
Okay, the last announcement, I believe you'll also be receiving an email from the city clerk, but we will have advisory body and Brown Act training on Monday, February 25th, from 6:30 to 8 o'clock here in the chambers. So mark your calendars.
Is this required, or?
I believe it is required, and the city clerk brings in external legal counsel to hold the session. So it's an hour and a half of training for all advisory bodies.
What was the date again?
Monday, February 25th.
There's a meeting, didn't we do that online once before?
I believe there's been online 1, 2, 3, 4 training,
Okay.
which is, I think, more of a ethics of commission and
So this is a
advisory
meeting
bodies.
we should attend.
This is actually more Brown Act and kind of meeting functions and that sort of thing.
Okay.
Yeah.
I will note that that is during the time that Mayor McQuaid, is she still mayor? Sorry, I don't know if they've
Vice Mayor.
reorganized.
No.
Okay.
Yeah, Rochelle Mason.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Anyway, Vice Mayor McQuaid scheduled a meeting for all of her appointees, but I guess they'll probably all need to be at the Brown Act training.
Right.
So that will have to get rescheduled. Okay.
And when and where?
Figure it out.
Time of day.
It's from 6:30 to 8 p.m. right here in the council chambers.
Okay.
Okay.
Any announcements?
Nothing new from us.
Next meeting, February 13th. And that'll be, I have to be sworn in to continue. Between now and the
Right.
13th, I have to be sworn in.
Correct.
Yeah.
You come the 13th, you start.
Okay.
Here.
All right.
You're ready.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you. Meeting closed.
And thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you for your
Years' worth of
service.
Service, yeah.
Pleasure, actually. Yeah, I don't know if it was a pleasure. It was fun.